Okay, round two. We got kicked off. I don't think I've ever gotten kicked off of a live. Maybe once before. I can't recall. Anyway, I'm back on. I hope Sara comes right back on, and the rest of you. We're going to be talking about family constellations and holiday time, holiday seasons. Here we go. Sara, thanks for coming back on. I think it's my connection that isn't the steadiest. Okay, here we go. Okay. So Sara is going to join. So hopefully she's going to join us any minute. Just wave and let me know if you can hear me clearly, if you can see me clearly. We're waiting for our amazing, here we go.
Hello. Am I on? There I am. Hi.
Hey, there you are. Okay, so I
We
think
made it.
made it. Yay! I think my connection was a little wonky, so if you lose me again, let me know. Just be like,
Okay.
So first of all, I just want to thank you for being game for joining. I know we hadn't really prepared everyone. Today's topic is going to be all about family constellation and holiday time, holiday season, and the concept of family constellation. I know it's been on one of like the TV. What was that TV show that you said spoke about family constellation therapy?
Sex, Love, and Goop on Netflix.
Okay, we're talking about it. So Hannah's one of our she's just an incredible human being, but she's also one of our staff members at Integrative. And we're going to have an awesome conversation today. If there's any questions anyone has, I saw some, then just drop it in to the message, drop a note, and we will do our best to respond. And obviously it's going to be saved in case you watch it right now. So Hannah, how about you go ahead and just introduce who you are as a person, as a professional? Yeah.
Absolutely. So, hi, everybody. I am Sara Segal. I am a licensed social worker. I also have a background in organizational behavior and development, so psychology in the workplace, and I'm a certified life coach. And what I love about Integrative is that I have this opportunity to integrate really those ideas, those methodologies, and so many other modalities, all in the service of healing. I love bringing in all kinds of different methodologies.
You want to talk about, wow, you hear the fire.
Oh yeah, there's a fire engine.
Yeah. So Hannah, do you want to share a little bit about
I'm coming from New York City, PS, Manhattan, so that accounts for the noises.
You're bringing the sound with us. Do you want to share a little bit about like what family constellations is? Because like we've had people reaching out saying, I want to go to therapy, but I want to do family constellation work, or, you know, our practices know not to just do talk therapy, but kind of go a little deeper than the surface. And we also do EMDR and somatic work and things like that. But family constellation is kind of working with the person's family system, but kind of like with a twist. So do you want to share a little bit about what family constellation is, how it offers something a little different? Yeah.
Absolutely, for sure. So family constellations is a really experiential way of working, which is what makes it so lovely. And it's a method that helps us identify hidden family dynamics that might be really affecting us on a day-to-day basis, but we're totally unaware of. And it allows us to kind of map out our family system, or chunks of it anyway, and kind of pressing the play button and letting it come alive and reveal what's underneath. And I'll get more into it in a bit, but that's kind of just like a little snapshot.
So are you saying that someone who might say, I want to do family constellation work, is kind of like what's is it that they're struggling with something, or there's something going on, and you'll tell us more about it, but there's kind of like a naming and like a demystifying, like there's something going on in my family system, and it could be family members that I'm close to, or even people I don't talk to, or people that I have a strained relationship with, or people that are no longer alive, right? I want us to name, and it's kind of like a person has certain like symptoms or struggles, but there's a way of working with that. Is that what you're saying? Because you said there's mapping it out. And I just want to say to anyone listening or listening a little later, the reason we're having this conversation about family constellation with Sara is that I know Corey and I had a live last week, something about the holiday time, like winter, Hanukkah, Christmas, any of the other holidays or this time of year. It almost like takes a highlighter to some of our unresolved stuff. It's like if your unresolved thing is that right now you are navigating something at work, or if you want to be in a certain place personally with a family goal, or even like a mental health goal, like you really want your anxiety to be a lot less, or you know, you want to have different kind of boundaries, or you really want to feel connected to your soul, or you want to take better care of like your sleeping pattern, or you have uh um or you really want to have certain dynamics different with like your partner, or you're feeling really emotionally lonely, or there isn't as much emotional intimacy, or whatever it is. Like, I just want to name the fact that this time of year things get highlighted. And Corey and I last week did this like social atom experiment. We were talking about mapping out people in our families or in our lives, and I took a pause at one point and I said, like, Corey, could we also notice some people feel lonely, or their social atom, right, where you draw out the people who are in your life close to you and far away. Some people like wish there were more people in their circle. So I just want to name that the reason Chana and I are having this conversation is that if you are feeling any kind of emotion, or sad or confused or hopeful or lonely, even if you're not like, even if you're surrounded by people or not, we almost want to create a platform or a conversation of maybe for you to understand yourself and your family or your existence on this planet in a little bit of a clearer way, so you can feel a little bit more maybe okay or clear about who you are and where you might want to go from here. Does that make sense? Yes? Okay. So
Yeah,
like,
and Esther, to your point, even those, for some people, they are spending a lot of time with family during this time, and it could be a mixed bag. It could be really wonderful. It could be really challenging. And then there are those that, are opting perhaps not to spend the holidays with their family, but that highlights a missing. And so even as we're distancing ourselves from our family, those dynamics are with us, and we're feeling that missing.
so are you saying that basically if there's someone, there's people who are choosing to spend time with family, highlighted, but even if someone says no, like, you know what, I set a boundary, my dad's really narcissistic, or I have a sibling who's very toxic, even if the person set those boundaries, they can and probably are still going to be feeling emotional experiences of whatever is going on, because they still are part of this like family constellation, so to speak. So they're still operating in their existence of self, even if they're setting certain boundaries or taking care of themselves. Is that what we're saying?
100%, yeah.
Okay.
And the beauty of family constellations, and part of the challenge is, we take our families with us, whether we're with them physically or not. They're with us in some capacity.
But like when you say that to me, it's almost like a part of me is like, there's so many quotes that say like, oh, there's family of choice, or you get to choose who you're connected to or not. And so many people out there in the world, like I saw a post the other day that said like, this is how you reparent yourself. And I gotta say, like, I'm all about reparenting and healing, but like I rolled really big. I was like, oh, I don't want to reparent myself all the time. Um, but at the same time, there was something a matter. It was more about the concept of like knowing yourself, knowing your story, knowing the ways that you have been loved and supported and tended to, in the wonderful ways that your family has, been there for you, and also noticing the areas where you might need to take care of yourself or to be aware of certain things, so you can build a more nourishing life, right? So when you say like taking our families with us, it's almost like, look, you can acknowledge it or not acknowledge it, but at the end of the day, like, this is where you come from, and you're probably going to do a heck of a better job doing this thing called life and love if you own it, right? And then you're strategic about healing from whatever it is that you are healing from. And it doesn't have to be major healing. It could even just be like knowing your story and then kind of building a life from there. Yeah. Do you want to tell us a little bit about like the history of family constellation, and maybe tell us about like what kind of clients want it, or what kind of symptoms it helps with,
Yeah,
what it might look like? Yeah.
100%. So, family constellations was actually formalized, and I use that word intentionally, by a German psychotherapist named Bert Hellinger. He actually passed away, I think, about a year or so ago. Initially, he was a missionary, and he went to South Africa to try to missionize what's called the Zulu tribe over there. But he actually was fascinated by living amongst them and observing their culture, and specifically the way that they engaged in healing. He noticed that healing took place in community, and there was a very strong focus on ancestry and bringing in ancestors into the healing process. And so, again, being a psychotherapist and weaving in a lot of different psychotherapy modalities as well, so psychodrama, Virginia Satir, family sculpting, family systems therapy. He kind of created and crystallized this way of working with our family dynamics.
Okay.
Um,
Wait, just one second, Sara. Is your phone on a like if there's like a little bit of a background noise, like there's like a wind? I don't know if like your phone is standing on something. Maybe it's my phone.
My
Uh,
phone is standing on my computer. I don't hear anything on my end.
does anyone hear? Yeah, it sounds like there's like a wind. Could you lift your phone for 1 second and then put it back
Yeah, let's
down?
see.
Yeah, it's
How's
gone
that?
now. Okay, put it back
Really?
down.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah, when you put it down, it's noisy. Lift it back up. It's gone.
Okay,
Ah,
let me try holding it.
okay.
I
You
don't want it to be shaky for people, but I'm going to try my best.
You're doing a pretty good job, but I'll let you know. Like maybe we'll try again soon. It sounds like
Okay,
it's like this wave, like we're under a wave.
okay.
Okay, it's the computer cooling system. Yeah,
Oh.
Laura, you're brilliant.
Hey,
Do
Laura.
you want to put it on another spot on the computer? Maybe put it like not where the fan is.
Shoot, let's think about this. Hold on. I'm actually going to turn off my computer. Maybe that will help. Is that better?
Yeah.
All right, we got it. Thanks, Laura.
Okay. Yeah. Somebody just wrote Jews historically heal through community, right? One
A
idea.
hundred
Got it.
percent.
Okay,
A
so let's
hundred
go back to
percent.
that communal piece, right? You're talking about like that we heal on communities, and then you were saying, yeah, just repeat what,
Yeah, so
yeah.
jumping off that point, the traditional way that this form of therapy or healing takes place is in a group, which is really quite cool. And what happens is, Esther, you asked, like, so are people coming, wanting to heal something in their family? So sometimes the answer is yes, but more often probably would be somebody struggling with something in their life, right? It's relationships. I can't seem to maintain a romantic relationship, or I can't allow myself to relax into a romantic relationship. Struggling with perhaps eating disorders. I can't keep a job. Like money runs away from me, right? And oftentimes people arrive here after trying a lot of different things. That's usually the case with some forms of alternative therapy. And it's kind of like, I've sat in therapy, I've tried doing the work, and I'm still experiencing this block. And through setting up the problem, which I'll explain just in a bit,
Mhm.
oftentimes family dynamics, it, it will be revealed that there are family dynamics that are playing into it.
So can I ask a question on that for a second?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're talking about why clients end up like engaging in family constellation work. So essentially, let's say somebody is struggling with settling into a romantic relationship. Like they got into a relationship, but basically, hi, Rachi, I love you too. But basically, there's this piece of like, I can't settle in. So what you're saying is that there's this piece of like possibly like they've done therapy, they might be aware cognitively of something going on, but there's this like family constellation energy or some kind of force that they're operating in unconsciously that's impacting them, or like the money thing, right? Like not being able, or this constant feeling of money escape. So there's basically a real struggle, and they're wanting to get clear, or they're wanting to really thoroughly get to the core so that they can actually undo it, right? Being in a romantic relationship and not being able to settle is exhausting. It's like having a plate of food and not being able to eat it.
Exactly.
Right? So could you take us along that for a little bit? Like what would that look like? How would you
Yeah.
start treatment with someone like that? What does that mean, setting it up?
Yeah, 100%. So when this is done in a group, you have a facilitator, and you have a seeker, it's called, or an issue holder, and they come with an intention, right? I want to be able to lose weight. I want to have abundance with money in my life. And that's kind of the intention. And then what happens, and this is the part where it gets a little bit woo-woo, so just bear with me for those super rational peeps out there. We operate in something called the knowing field. That's a term coined by a psychotherapist named Albert Marr. And it's just this idea that there exists around us this field of energy that contains memories about our life, and those we're interconnected with. And I know this might sound a little funky, but actually there are those thinkers who explain that this happens in biology a lot. It happens with animals and the way for example, that birds fly together in certain really cool orchestrated patterns, right? There's this field of memory that they're all drawing from, actually. And Carl Jung, a psychotherapist, talked about the collective unconscious, this idea that we each have this thing inside of our soul that kind of connects to really everybody at large. So there's this notion here that there's a family conscious as well, right? We have our individual conscious and there's a family conscious, and it contains all the memories and information about our family. Those that are present, those that came before us. Yeah, do you want to jump in to help me clarify?
I kind of want to ask you on that for just a minute. So you said there's something called the knowing field. What was the term called?
Yeah, it's called the knowing field. Another term for it is called the morphogenetic field. So these are funky words.
I'm living in the morphogenetic, but
yeah,
I'm gonna go with the term. I mean, if you want to sound all like psychologically sexy, just say like I am in this morphogenetic field. But wait 1 second. So are you saying in this moment, any of us right now, like I'm hanging out here and there's no one around me, so it's almost like I'm operating in this knowing field of like this, there's collective unconscious of like people, but at the same time there's also like the generational almost like memories or powers. What were you saying about the birds flying? Is it like they kind of just, because they fly in a V, right? Is that how they fly, or is that what you're talking about?
They fly in a V, but if you look on YouTube also, oh my gosh, they also fly in these gorgeous formations that I can't quite describe. I don't know if anybody like listening has or watching has seen that and can like chime in. But beyond the V, they fly in these beautiful patterns, kind of like spiraling and weaving. And the question is like, how do they know to do it, right? Like it's happening way too fast for them to be like looking at each other and following and coordinating. There's like an inherent knowing and knowledge.
Yeah, there isn't like swarms, right? Exactly. They're flying.
Swarm, thank you. Yeah.
There isn't
another example, because there's a scientist by the name of Rupert Sheldrake who talks about, he coined this fancy term, or at least talks about it, morphogenetic, that pretentious sounding term. He also talks about like wolves in the wild, and how there's this inherent bond and knowledge between them. And even if one of them goes out hunting, like miles and miles away, the others are able to stay connected in some way. There's like a sixth sense almost.
Yeah, and someone's talking about epigenetics. That is actually
exactly. So epigenetics fits in here in a big way. Quantum entanglement, if anybody's familiar with that idea, that molecules that were once connected that are since separated miles, hundreds and thousands of miles away in different laboratories, when there is a change to one molecule, let's say here in New York, a molecule in Russia can be affected. And this is actually pure science, like if you Google quantum entanglement, and it's really beautiful. And the same exists for us as people.
So what is we might time? What, because like Rachel actually asked a good question of like, does this kind of does this collective unconscious, does that also impact on like social media platforms, kind of this like unspoken energy, or is it
100%?
Okay.
Yeah, because we're focusing on families today, but constellation work can also happen with all different types of groups. So, you can do constellations in organizations. You can do constellations actually in a lot of other countries, European and I would say South American. They do group healing on like poverty and war, right? So there's all these different groups that we can tune into and being working with. Okay, I feel like maybe I should actually explain what a session looks like to kind of give a little more clarity.
Family, like what would it look like if we're talking about family constellations, we're talking, let's say somebody's sitting on the couch, not that this exists, but like we're in the middle of Hanukkah, or even if like you're not Jewish, but it's almost like the weather's getting colder, there's all these songs on the radio, there's great advertisements, but it's like your heart and your soul are cognizantly aware of things going on for you in your life. So let's just talk about this. Or do you want to come up with that example of like someone who's struggling? You come up, give us like a case example.
Yeah.
Lives.
Yeah. So I'm going to walk you through like what a group workshop looks like. Okay. So you start with a bunch of people sitting in a circle or however, and this issue seeker comes and states what it is that they want to be looking at. Okay, and then they'll be instructed by the facilitator. The facilitator you can think of kind of like a director or an orchestrator, who's really helping to set up this process, but not directing it, and that's a really important difference. So she'll guide the person to say, let's go with the girl, the woman who is having a hard time settling in romantic relationships. She meets great guys, and she'll have a good first 3 months or so, and then something happens at that 3 month mark. She starts to get kind of itchy and uncomfortable, maybe looking for a way out, right? Okay. The facilitator says to her, pick somebody to represent yourself. Okay. And when you're in this space, you're not looking at people and saying, who looks like me? Who do I think could embody me? You're actually going with this like gut instinct. The first person who pops in, you pick that person and you place them somewhere in the room. Okay. Then the facilitator is going to guide you. Hearing you describe a little bit more about what's going on, she might say, okay, pick somebody to represent your mother and go place her in the room. Okay. Sounds like psychodrama. I'm gonna address that in a little bit. And so you'll go do that, and you'll place the mom in relationship to the daughter. You're not thinking too hard about it. It's just like a feeling of, And then the person sits down and kind of watches this unfold. And the two representatives, they're called representatives, start feeling into like what's coming up for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So mom, for example, might turn around and cross her arms. She might start walking away, right? And throughout, the facilitator's checking in and she's saying, hey, what's coming up for you? Mom might say, I can't look at her. I can't look at her. I don't want to be near her. I just want space. I'm looking out the window, right? And this already is revealing to us, okay, there's some disconnect between mom and daughter. There's something that's not allowing mom to stand in the role as mom and relate to her daughter as mom, right? So then we try these like little experiments or shifts. We might bring in other people that feel necessary, but eventually what we're looking to do is we're finding where things are out of order, right? Like what I just named, that's something out of order, right? And mom should be able to stand behind her daughter, supporting and loving and having this flow, right? So we're identifying what's out of order and we're wanting to shift and realign things.
So I have a question for you because you went to like choosing mom. So this woman is basically struggling to settle into a romantic relationship. The seeker, so the person who's kind of organizing this basically just has this like clinical insight to ask about mom. Is that what's happening? Like, it's like, we're not going to pull in the boyfriend. We're not going to have someone represent the boyfriend. And this,
we might start it really. I picked mom because, I'm assuming there's like this whole backstory, right?
Okay, so I get it. The backstory might, right. And the mom having a difficult time being present with the daughter might be connected to why the daughter is having a hard time settling into the relationship.
Correct.
But what would that look like though in real time? Like, how would they work on helping that align? If let's say mom can't look at the daughter, has a difficult time nourishing that daughter, what would a family constellation therapy look like? Would the therapist, we don't have to go into the specifics, but is it like, because it sounds like, right, we're like very quickly, it's almost like you're naming the issue and you're unconsciously tapping into like a dynamic that's happening, and it's almost like the people in the room almost drawn to that dynamic. But how do you work with
Yeah. So you're gonna ask mom more questions and you're gonna say, mom, like, what's keeping you from taking a step towards your daughter? Or like, can you actually try? Like, what would happen if I know this is uncomfortable, what would happen if you turned around and looked at your daughter? And mom might say, she might do so and say, oh, I feel so much pain. I feel so much sadness. I can see her now as my daughter, but I can't come closer to her, right? And we continue asking. It's like this investigative process in a sense. Sometimes let's say mom's focus was like out the window, as I said, or she might be looking elsewhere. We might say, mom, what are you looking at, right? And sometimes that reveals that there's other people who need to come in, other people who, for example, a big thing that comes up in constellations would be abortions and miscarriages and stillborns, for example. Oftentimes, at least I would say in previous generations now, thank God there's a lot more awareness and talking about it, but in previous generation for sure, there's a lot of secrecy around that.
So are we saying that sometimes, just tell me up for a second, are we saying that sometimes, let's say I have a struggle. So if I go to a family constellation therapist now, and we'll talk about psychodrama, we'll talk about parts work or any kind of other therapy that therapists engage with, but what are we basically saying, and we'll talk about our practice because we don't offer this group family constellation work. We do more one-on-one, and maybe we will be inspired to do the group work. But are we basically saying that being able to tap into the the unspoken systems or secrets or just people or energies, then essentially we are allowing to uncover these like burdens or energies that are existing around the person, which might be directly or indirectly responsible for or connected to that struggle. So say for, just help me out so I understand it as everyone else.
I want to let me give you an example of like what the story might be in this constellation. The story might be that mom, sometimes they're dramatic like this, sometimes they're more subtle, but the story might be that mom had a a lover and somebody she was deeply in love with, and they died in some sort of accident at the 3-month mark or around that time. And mom later remarried, had this girl, and had this daughter. But there's a part of mom that is always kind of looking after and longing after.
Wow. So unconsciously, this daughter, let's say this like 35-year-old daughter who's looking for love, is unconsciously playing out this secret that mom may have or may have not shared of I had this lover and my body is still trapped in this trauma memory or this grief of my lover who died at the 3-month mark. So that's unfinished business. So unconsciously, daughter is almost like moving her life, and she keeps getting blocked there and it has nothing to do with her, but there's
correct
this energy that's still in mom's. Wow. Okay.
Because there's this notion, and maybe zooming out a little bit and just sharing some like basic principles of family constellation, there's this notion of blind love, right? That if something happens to a member of a family in a certain generation that's not adequately processed or given weight to, or hidden away, a later member of the family will unconsciously take on some of that burden. We call that entanglement, right? So it's totally below the level of consciousness. They might not even know this lover ever existed, right?
Is this like a legacy, like in IFS language? So is it kind of like legacy burdens, like unconsciously? Because I also want to talk about what would healing look like for this girl so she finally gets the love. No, but really, because legacy burdens in IFS, right, or in parts work, is that we carry the burdens of like generations before, and we unconsciously like patterns and we don't even know why always. It's not just like sitting on a therapist couch being like, I don't know why I do this. And it's almost like as we heal or unburden or process through whatever that legacy burden is or this entanglement that you're talking about, we actually clear the way to live our lives or to do what
exactly.
So
exactly. And we also
so what were you gonna say?
Yeah, you use the language of burden. It's a lot about also handing back burdens that don't belong to us. So saying, actually, mom, this burden belongs to you. And with love, I'm going to hand this back to you and let you own it so I can be free to turn towards love.
So just to speed through a session, even though we're not doing one right now, maybe we'll do one at some point and you'll heal me. but Chana, is it basically that in a session like that, say mom is like looking outside the window, is remembering her lover. It's hard for her to see her daughter struggling with finding love because it might she might not even be aware of it, but it's this like lover. So is the healing essentially maybe mom acknowledging the pain? Obviously this wouldn't happen like this. It really depends on the process. And then her grieving it, but the daughter almost saying like, mom, this is yours. And then either engaging in activity or verbally, almost like, I know with clients sometimes we literally like give it back or we send it back, and we literally a physical or an art or a somatic exercise where we're literally like handing it back, and then we help the person like process and move with what their hopes and dreams are. And it's not an overnight thing. Sometimes layers, sometimes it's almost like there's a a huge relief, and then you'll see the shift in the person's life. So, and it's almost like, wow, you're really settling into this. So is that what it was?
Yeah.
Checking if that's the similarity. Yeah.
Yeah. So in this example, we would probably bring in somebody to represent that deceased lover, right? So
Oh,
that, yeah,
what? So mom could process the loss properly?
yeah. So mom could process, so the daughter can see. We might even bring in, our client's father, right? Because he's affected in this too. Well, it depends how relevant it is to
Right.
what's going
Right.
on.
Right. If mom's heart was with someone else, then it's almost like bringing that lover and the daughter seeing it. Wow, this is my mom's struggle. Mom owning it. Mom naming it for herself, also for her current, let's say, partner or husband. And wow.
Yeah, and usually what we'd notice if we gave mom the opportunity to really grieve appropriately, usually that would free up or shift something where then it's like, oh, hey, you're my daughter. I love you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And this kind of happens pretty naturally. I mean, we help facilitate it along, but when we acknowledge what needs to be acknowledged and we shine light on what's been going on, that creates shifts automatically.
Yeah. It's almost like unclogging a drain, right? Like that's
Yeah.
what in this healing work, it's almost like, wow, this has been there. And we've seen this right for so many years. They're holding something and it's kind of like a really just giving it clarity, like clearing the windshield. And then yeah, obviously grieving or letting go then allows space for the being in the moment and living lives. So Sarah, how does this impact, maybe do you want to talk about like the three basic tenets of family constellation?
Yes.
Maybe how this impacts us, because
Yes.
all of us have that lover story and maybe we're struggling, we're navigating, or have someone in our life that's navigating something. So I wonder if we could talk a little bit about like a little bit more about family constellation and being able to utilize,
Yeah.
yeah, for ourselves right now.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about the three basic ideas because even if, somebody's watching and sort of interested, but they might not be going to a workshop anytime soon, or they might not be doing a session anytime soon, these are kind of ideas and principles that we can hold that can be really helpful. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so the first one is belonging. And that is that every single member of a family belongs and has a place, right? And nothing can take that away. So I mentioned earlier abortions or miscarriages. Like I've seen constellations, for example, a woman coming from a country years ago where abortions were illegal and birth control was not accessible. It simply wasn't accessible. And she didn't have the capacity to support all the pregnancies that came up. So she'd have to unfortunately abort the baby in ways that we don't need to describe, but and it kept happening and she couldn't stop it, right? And
What
then
kept happening?
she kept getting pregnant.
Okay, so there was a woman who kept getting pregnant, didn't have, okay,
And
go on.
then her daughter who did live and survived was suffering from all those unconsciously from all those aborted siblings. But my point, but those were secretive, right? So coming back to this idea of belonging, every single one of those unrealized pregnancies, each one is a soul that has a place in the family system.
So are you saying that you've seen a family constellation? Let's say there's this girl, and let's say she's an only child. So there's basically this piece of like, but she's having certain symptoms that sound really confusing, or she's struggling. We're not going to name whatever it is. And essentially, mom had had these really traumatic experiences. Like it was almost traumatic that she got pregnant. It was traumatic that she had to abort the children in a way that was very difficult for her and her body. And so essentially, the child that lived, her family constellation would look like not just her and her mom and whoever else is part of it, but almost like all these previous babies that never came into being
Yeah,
because they're energetically connected. Wow. So it's almost like we
because
carry, yeah, go on.
because this person, I mean, I'll change a little bit of details for just, confidentiality's sake, but this could lead to this feeling of I don't deserve to be alive, like the survivor's guilt, right? Without
Right.
even necessarily knowing about the aborted siblings, or even we could bring it over to miscarriages, right? Because not all the time do kids know that they might have had, siblings who didn't make it full term, right? But yeah, but that affects us, and there might be this nagging feeling of I don't deserve to be here. I don't want to live.
Mm. So basically, yeah, sometimes when our clients present with certain things, instead of looking for like, oh, is there something currently, or if we notice that there isn't something current in their life, it's almost like, yeah, that person with these babies that didn't get the opportunity to live, she was struggling with like, do I even want to be here, or do I deserve to be here? And working with the family constellation, almost like aloud, looking at the story and then unburdening her, right? So she
Yeah.
could like choose life or be in the life that was given to her, even with all these other ones that weren't.
Yeah. Coming back to this idea of
Yeah.
belonging, when these babies are given, when these siblings are acknowledged and just brought into the light of day, that freed her up to live her life, right? So, like in a constellation, that might look like saying, like turning to somebody representing these babies and saying, hey, like, dear brother or dear sibling, I see you. It's a shame that we never got to meet, but I hold a place in my heart. I'm going to live my life and honor you, right? But they need to be honored as part of the family, right? So that's belonging.
So basically, we all belong to something. You don't like, oh, I feel like I belong. Kind of, we belong. We come from somewhere, and we belong to something. And even acknowledging and knowing the things that we belong to is really powerful and important.
Extremely so, right? And we mentioned in the beginning of this live that some people might not be spending the holidays or might be disconnected from family in certain ways. And that might be the right choice, for right now. But that can leave us feeling kind of like just blowing in the wind. Like, where am I? I'm not attached to anything. And there's this notion that, no, you're still part of this constellation. It's bigger than just your parents, right? It's bigger than this generation. You have a place.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a black sheep of a family that the family is like not so proud of, or like a little bit uncomfortable. So they don't, maybe like they turn those pictures down on the mantle when some people come over because they're ashamed, right? That creates disorder, and that creates a lot of unhealthy
So
dynamic.
belonging is like even noticing the things that we belong to, and then kind of like our narrative around it. Well, the black sheep,
Yeah.
I want to talk to you about the black sheep, but usually the black sheep is the person who's naming the family truths, right? Yeah. Yeah. So
Amen.
comfortable, but it's like, hello. Can I say this or no? Okay, so there's the concept of belonging. So there's like
Yeah.
that we belong even as we're choosing whatever we're choosing, and different people are choosing different things at this time of year.
Yeah.
What are
Yeah.
there?
Yeah. Then there's order, right? There's what's called orders of love. And we can look at this kind of like hierarchy of who comes first and second. So simply put, those who are older than us or from a previous generation always belong behind us, right? So in an instance, let's say of parentification, of when a child is taking on duties that really belong to a parent, that creates a mismatch of order,
Oh,
right? And
order is off. So meaning sometimes we'll see a symptom of someone, but it's kind of like part of this is like the order is off. Like you're being mom when essentially you're meant to
yeah,
be child, so you're almost like behind and you're supposed to be forward.
exactly. And so let's say somebody's used to like that was their childhood maybe, but they're still carrying that into adulthood. So that might be something to look at. Like, hey, I'm actually the daughter here. Like you're my mom
Mm.
and I'm the little one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's order. And what's the last one?
The last one is acknowledging what is. So it's so simple, but it's so profound. It's being willing to state sometimes the obvious, sometimes the not so obvious, but being willing to call it like it is, right? So we're all familiar with the idea of like the elephant in the room, right?
What elephant?
And I mean, we know what that feels like. We know what it's like when there's a dynamic that's there that we're just not naming. It stands between us.
So
It
right
creates,
now, like for all of us, like if we look at, because I want to look at the elephant piece, like because there's many different kinds of elephants, right? There's like the mama elephant, there's a little baby elephant, there's like the elephant that smells but isn't there, there's the invisible elephant, right? You know what I mean? Um,
the elephant that smells but isn't
yeah,
there.
like sometimes it's like, see you, it smells like an elephant. It's like, it's in the room, but like somehow somebody put that disappearing magic here. So we're all smiling, but we feel this energy. Really funny. Serve at lunch, right? Serve it. Serve the elephant lunch. Let's all sit together and finally have a real conversation. No, but Sarhana, like I wonder because you're saying like there's the naming what is, there's the role order, and then there is belonging. So, could you tell us like how right here, right now, like what are things that all of us can do, or is there something that we can do to help our own selves with this
Yeah.
that we live in, or yeah, or one.
Well, something I really appreciate in you, Esther, is that I notice a lot of the time you'll bring up like a dynamic that's going on and you're saying, I just want to name it, right? Like you're not necessarily proposing a solution. Maybe you are, but I just want to name it, right? And there's a power in doing that, right? In saying, hey, I see what's happening. And doing this in our friendships, with our kids, really with anyone. It's a brave step and it can be really uncomfortable. Perhaps naming like, hey, I know you've been calling me a lot and I've not really been returning your calls. I just want to acknowledge that I've been going through XYZ, or you're not even offering an explanation, right? But kind of taking accountability for your own part, right?
Well, I think there's a power there, by the way. Thanks for bringing that up because I think essentially family constellation is that there's a lot of like secrecy, and it might be like purposeful or not purposeful secrecy, right? Like, it
Exactly.
might be something they found out about their family and they were like, oh my God, like they're almost like shocked again and again and again. It's almost like the same thing with working like trauma memories or even just like processing through, like you talk about like if somebody's not connected to their family now physically, it's almost like feeling like you're flying in the wind, or it's almost like making sense of like, right, like, oh, of course you're feeling this way. So there's something about like, let me just like name what's happening because I feel a lot less wobbly and I feel a lot less confused when it's like, I know you've been calling me because there's this unspoken feeling of you're chasing after me, or you have something that you want to tell me or share with me or ask of me and I'm running away. So that's like, right, the naming it. So
Hmm.
that's a huge piece. So are we kind of inviting people here? And I don't know if this is what you're asking, but I sometimes invite people to be like, what are the things, or is there something in your life that needs to be named? And it doesn't
Mm.
have to be, um, and it doesn't even have to be something big, and it doesn't even have to be with someone else, but it could even just be like right here, right now, or sometime in the next week as you're digesting this. It might be like, I'm kind of feeling lonely in my marriage, or I realize that although I'm committed to this, role at a job, I'm really checked out, or kind of really mad at God, or, I'm really grieving, my role as a mom. Maybe I am one, maybe I'm not, right? Or I'm really loathing, or self-sabotaging. I don't know, but just like, and it could even be naming something positive. I'm a freaking rock star. I've been showing up for this, right? For like my child who's been incredibly demanding, and I've been doing such a good job, and it's going to take like another 50 years to see the results, but wow.
Yeah. Esther, when you were listing off like those examples, I don't know if anybody else felt it, but like there's like a quietness almost, like a quiet acknowledgement, right? There's like a weightiness to all those different types of statements that you said, right? I'm lonely in my marriage. I'm uncomfortable being a mom. It's kind of like we distract ourselves. There's so much noise, but that simple statement, there's such a power in that. And I felt it.
Yeah. Or even like now it's almost like I'm grieving my family, or, I'm grieving my emotionally dead father,
Yeah.
or I'm grieving my handicapped brother, emotionally
Right.
handicapped, right?
Right. Yeah.
Just like naming it, and like I know myself, I've come to my own clarity in different things in my life. It's just like I'll be like, friends be like, hey, how are you? And I'll just be like, oh, this, and there's just like a relief of like, oh, well, we're having the conversation, whatever the conversation is, right? Or like I see with friends, like I bumped into a friend and I'm like, you look so alive, and she's like, yeah, well, I finally acknowledged that this person was blah blah blah, and it wasn't even something positive. I'm like, well, that gives you energy, and she's like, yeah, because it's like it's the truth. Um,
Yeah. And to your point about the elephants, like all the different types, usually by simply naming, like the elephant's like this massive hunk of an elephant all of a sudden shrinks and becomes this cute little, like, oh, what a cutie little elephant.
Did you see that book? I spoke about it at Madrigos when at the Rosh Hashanah retreat, and like so many people afterwards ordered it. And it's one of my son has all these bedtime stories. There's this book called "There's No Such Thing as a Dragon." Do I have it? If not, I have to get it for the office. Okay, so there's something called "There's No Such Thing as a Dragon," and there's like Billy Bixby wakes up, and there's a dragon, and mom says there's no such thing as a dragon, so he just like ignores it, right? Because if there's no such thing, let's just not acknowledge it. And then the dragon, the painting. The dragon takes up space, and the dragon this and the dragon that. The dragon gets really big and is like filling up every single room in the house. Billy's coming really late to school. He's tripping over the dragon, but there's no such thing as a dragon, so we acknowledge it. Finally, like the house is like flipped over. There's a whole thing that happens. And finally, like Billy's dad comes home, and then Billy's mom says, "What's going on?" And Billy says, "Mom, there's a dragon." And mom starts saying, "There's no such." And he's like, "Yes, mom, there's a dragon. See it." And as they see it and they acknowledge it, it starts shrinking in size. And then the mom says, "Well, if it wasn't so big, I would have looked at it." And Billy says, "Actually, it seems like it just needs." Oh, she's like, "Oh, I think when it's smaller, it's tolerable." Yeah, but all it wanted was to be noticed.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
I'm gonna link it here, right? So I think there's something about like, look, sometimes we have dragons and we don't like them, but are we going to wait for them to become huge and explosive? It's kind of like if you're in a bad mood and then you pretend you're not in a bad mood and then you're screaming and you're tripping on yourself and you're stubbing your toe and you're shouting and everything's coming out bad versus like, I'm in a bad mood and I could go about my day and it might not be a glorious day, but it will be a functional day versus like family dysfunction or our own dysfunction when we ignore it and it almost contaminates all of us.
Yeah. Yeah. So like as you're saying, there's this naming for ourselves and acknowledge sometimes that can even be the harder thing to do is naming to ourselves like what's actually going on. And then there's also this in our relationships, being able to name what's between us.
Can we talk about the naming for ourselves for just a minute? I think there's layers to naming for ourselves. I think there's layers. I think there's like, it's almost like in therapy, we talk about like the pre-contemplative stage, which is like, am I going to therapy? I don't even know. And then there's like the contemplative phase, like, should I do therapy? This could be with anything, right? Should I not? Should I take care of myself? Should I not? Should I notice my emotions? Should I not? So there's pre-contemplative, there's contemplative, right? What's the next phase again? I think that's like the first step.
Preparation,
right? So
and then action.
Yeah, and action. So there's almost like steps that we take, okay? So I want to say as a fellow, like I know that there are things in life where like I didn't even have conscious awareness of, and I kind of didn't want to. It's like I'll keep myself really, really busy. So I want to just like say, like, look, we never go digging for stuff. It's not like a thing to go digging for. But if you are feeling some rumbling or some annoyance or frustration, like I was the other day in Marshall's with my son and his friend who were doing gift mom there, and the kid kept dropping the bottle on the floor, and the mom kept like shouting, and she was like shouting at her husband, and I had a part of me that wanted to go over to her and like be like, honey, like I don't know if you're exhausted or tired or whatever, something's bothering you, and it's not that darn little milk bottle that your daughter keeps like throwing on the floor because she wants your attention, you know. And I saw myself in her, meaning like times that I'm just like, where's the chicken? Why is it, you know, like sometimes like we're just like, why isn't my order delivery here yet? Like it was supposed to be here an hour ago. And it's like, you don't, okay, yeah, you want your food and whatever, but like at the end of the day, it's like, is it really about the delivery or is there something inside that's really not okay? You know? So I think that just like saying like, number one, sometimes we're not fully there and that's okay. But I think number two is like, Sarhan, I think awareness sometimes is scary. I think we're aware. I think like, I know you did the EMDR training. I think one of the pieces is like, even as you become aware, like allow yourself to do it in tiny slivers. Because I think like I know, remember I once had a friend who said something to me and she was like, but Esther, and I was like, by the way, like I heard what you said, but it would have felt so much nicer if you gave it in like a gentle delivery. And, you know, I said, when we have defenses, then, and it's the same thing we do with our clients, right? It's like when our clients have defenses or when we have defenses, we don't just like take off their winter coat and leave them in the snow. Like, wow, I noticed you're wearing a thick winter coat. It must really keep you warm. We really want to challenge something or notice that there's something in our life, then instead of me saying like, just rip off that jacket, I would say like, okay, it seems like you need something to keep you warm. Maybe, right? Maybe it's ready to take off the jacket, put on a very thick sweater, or maybe you can like notice that you're wearing a heavy jacket, and maybe even notice that you have a lot of defenses or that you're very anxious, and it might be about, right? So we don't yank it off because I'm only naming this Sarhana because for sometimes people could feel like it's really hard. And I just want to say it is hard.
Sure.
When you do it, or even if you say to yourself, I'm lonely in this marriage, or you say it to your partner, just know it can take like a lot of layers and emotions, and it's not something that you're just meant to do, right? Like
Yeah.
little bitty
As
stuff.
you're talking, Esther, I'm thinking about the difference between like, awareness as being illuminating versus blinding light, right?
Ah,
And yeah, so to your point about bit by bit, and going back to family constellations for a moment, there's this principle that the field is only going to reveal what you're ready to integrate and what you're ready. Like we're not looking to like dive into the deepest, biggest trauma and just, go at it. No, we're looking for subtle shifts. What's ready to come out now? What am I ready to take a peek at? I could
mm.
take a peek and then put it away. What am I ready to take a peek at?
So right. So you're saying good family constellation work or good like therapy work is essentially like we're working with like a layer that's impacting your life. And as we work with it, there's a sense of relief or a certain sense of clarity. We have to like flip the whole board game upside down, right? It's kind of like we're just going to work with this layer. And actually even
Mm-hmm.
actually help, right? Or can make a shift.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like this. Like this is I kind of want to do so we want to talk for a second about how you use family constellation and therapy because right now you're not doing the groups, even though we might push for groups at some point. But how would you use this in or we'll see?
Yeah. So family constellations can definitely be done individually. We can use figurines and set those up or different papers to represent people. We have a sand tray in our office, which is so much fun and super conducive for this work. But it doesn't even necessarily need to be like a formal constellation, right? Just these ideas of, for example, imagining your mom in the room or whoever it is and like where would she be standing, where would she be sitting, as we invite this energy in, like notice what happens in your body,
Hmm.
right? What happens when you look towards that space where she's standing? Do you want to move towards her? Do you need a pillow? Like do you need some buffer or protection, right? So we can kind of slice it down to these micro movements, these micro explorations.
Hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And also incorporating some healing sentences, again, of just acknowledging what is. So, for example, um, I acknowledge you as my mother. I thank you for the life you gave me. We could be formulaic like that. It tends to be a little bit formulaic, or we can also um, find the client's own words, an own way of saying it, their own way of acknowledging what needs to be said.
Hmm. Almost like giving words or giving a message. It might
Yeah,
be written or just even said. So it's almost like
yeah,
we're yeah, yeah. So like create
yeah.
yeah, go on.
Sorry. I was going to say we can use like expressive arts, like so drawing out a family picture, seeing who's missing, right? Like who would you expect to be in this picture
Mm.
that for whatever reason is not? Or who do you wish were in this picture, right? Maybe it's the romantic partner that you have yet to manifest, or maybe it's the children that you want one day, or
Mm.
maybe it's abundance in your work, whatever it might be, right? So we can use expressive arts, we can use figurines, we can use visualization. There's really a lot of different ways to bring it in.
The reason this work excites me is because I like the heebie-jeebie stuff, and it's not just heebie, but I'll tell you what. Honestly, like therapy is magic, and I don't just mean therapy. I think tapping into like our life stories. I think truth is magic. When we own it. I like the family concept.
Esther, I'm not hearing you.
Am I? Do you hear me, or is it my phone? Hello, can you hear me?
I hear you. Yeah, you were cutting out for me, but maybe others heard you.
I was naming the fact that like the reason that I like this conversation and the importance about speaking about this is because the magic of healing happens in these moments when we're naming and we're acknowledging and we're working with this because we're unburdening. Like I've seen clients create work opportunities or deepen a love relationship or be incredibly more present with their children or just, am I still breaking up? Let me
No,
know.
you're good now. You're
Okay.
good now.
Like I just think I just want to name this like that I just get this warm feeling inside because there's something about truth and truth is magic. It's not that therapy is like a magic thing, but I have to say that there's some magical moments that happens in the therapy room for with clients that are ready. And like I just love hearing Sarhana, your wisdom and this specialization of working with family constellations. I just want to name to anyone listening here, like there's ways to work with your system. If we can help at our practice, we're more than happy to be a resource. Um, and also just even continuing these conversations about like making sense of who you are so we can have more spaciousness in our lives and allow the magical moments to happen because yeah, this is the time of magic in whatever way. And magic could even just be starting to look at your truth in a little bit of a way, like turning that candle on, kind of like the Hanukkah menorah, right? It's like, how am I lighting the fire in my soul or in my truth? What was that quote you wanted to share, Sarah, before we wrap up?
That was on the topic of Hanukkah. Let's segue right in. Um, yeah, we were talking, you and I, Esther, about like what it is that lights us up, right? And I love this quote, which is, "Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do it." Because what the world needs is people who have come alive.
Yeah, so all of you, dear darlings, and I'm talking to myself as well, and Sarhana, let us find our things that help us come alive and go do it. And it could be something really small, like making a homemade yummy dinner. It could be cleaning up your room. It could be writing your poem, connecting. It could be opening your heart or getting in some healing or some truth telling. So I am going to wish all of you, thank you for being on here. Anyone listening there, wherever you are, I hope that you feel the warmth and the care from our constellation of the collective unconscious love and connection. Wherever you are. Do you have thoughts you want to share, Sarhana, before we go out?
No, thanks for I mean, lots and lots, but I think this is a great stopping point for today. So I enjoyed our chat, and thank you, everybody,
Yeah,
for
thank
being.
you. We'll add some notes. So just check out for it soon, and it's called Family Constellation Therapy, and we are so glad you're on here. Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon.